over at BangTheBook.com. We are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. Lots of great stuff already up there for this weekend in the NFL and college football. Daily NBA, daily college basketball, daily NHL as well. We cover all the niche markets too. No UFC this week. NASCAR is done, but we'll still have some soccer stuff for you. Once the tennis season rolls back around, we'll come up with that. And also some esports available over at the website as well. Finally, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio, presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB and the number 200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the sportsbook. 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. Two guests on the program here today. We start with professional handicapper Bryan Leonard from WagerTalk.com. Bryan, how's it going today, man?
Hey, everything's going great. Good to be back on the show. And I did a podcast yesterday, and as soon as I sat down to do the podcast, my smoke alarm started going off in one of the other places in the house. And it was right in the middle of the podcast, couldn't get up and go get it. As soon as the podcast ended, I packed everything up and went looking for it, and it went off. It just stopped working or stopped beeping. I'm starting to think that I'm a little bit possessed here. There's a ghost in here who doesn't want me to do some of these podcasts.
Well, hopefully the ghost is okay with doing mine, and hopefully we don't have any kind of issues here on today's show. And I want to open with something that's very important for all of our listeners out there. Last weekend, I loved my Super Contest card. I was a huge fan of it. I'm thinking, all right, I'm finally going to get one of those elusive 5-0s. I went 2-3. Did go 3-2 in the Circa Million. Wound up switching the Dolphins and the Saints between the two entries. But, Bryan, it's so frustrating in this business to feel like you really love something and then have it come up short. That hangover just kind of lasts for a while.
Yeah, it does. I've been on a losing streak myself. I used Memphis yesterday against the Golden State Warriors. And, Memphis hadn't been a favorite all year, but the situation was right there for them. We've seen Golden State. They've only got like two guys on the entire team at this point that they could create their own shots. It's a team that grades out by my numbers as to be the worst team in the NBA by far. And yet the Grizzlies just didn't show up and never had a chance in that game. And I'm still scratching my head as to what happened with my analysis. You're always trying to learn from your loss. You're lucky if you win, or you got to learn if you're unlucky if you lose. And a lot of people pay attention to the teams that they've lost on or the games that they've lost, but they just assume they should have won every game, so they don't go back and check to see if they've been lucky. And it's something you really have to do after every game and see if it played out the way you thought it did, or maybe, you just got lucky in that game. And, it's not been going good for me lately, so there's been a lot of looks at what happened the night before for me lately.
And it's such a difficult thing, too. I mean, again, like I said, I loved my NFL card, and it is very, very rare for me to love an NFL card. I mean, it's a very tough market to beat, as we know. Obviously, there's so much that goes into the gameplay itself that you just cannot account for, the officiating, turnovers, coaching decisions, so on and so forth. But I got to say, man, it's one of the hardest things for me with this business is to try and keep my confidence level up. I know you and I were talking before the show that, you have been in a little bit of a rut there with your plays. You wind up getting gun shy. You wind up not wanting to play things. On the other hand, it's kind of one of those things, and you and I are both baseball guys, you kind of got to hit your way out of a slump sometimes. And it's easier said than done, obviously. But, man, at this time of the year, with so much going on, all these different betting markets, if you've got a crisis of confidence, it just makes it that much harder. And that's the spot I'm in right now. I mean, I had a terrible college basketball night last night, too. It's frustrating to wake up the morning after and just have that stuff linger.
Yeah, it does. And I've been doing this close to 40 years, and it still affects me. It doesn't affect me nearly as much as it affects a lot of the other guys I work with. Not saying that I don't take losses better. I take losses better than anybody else. The thing is, I've been through it all so many times that I know there's going to be another side to it coming up just anytime soon, which is another reason why I don't get all excited when I have wins. And if you're on a winning streak, because eventually, we're all trying to get to that point where at the end of the year, you need to hit 52.38 to break even, and we're all trying to just better that in the full year, and then that's how you judge how you've done, not just a week, not just a day, not just a month. So, but you're right, it's a different feeling when you get out of bed when you're winning. You can't wait to get to that card. But if you're losing, especially if you're having some tough losses, it takes a little, I'm not a coffee drinker, but I could assume that it takes you an extra cup of coffee to get up and get ready to do that if you're not seeing the card well. And, it's funny because, I was just back in Ohio for a family emergency. I just didn't have the time to put in my full effort each and every day. And I won all the time. It was a piece of cake. And I found that when I go on vacation, my records are always better. So maybe I'm just, looking at the surface stats and it's working out that way. If I get somebody to help me just move to Hawaii full time, they'd be a rich man and I'd be a happy man if you want to move me down there. But yeah, get back to Vegas and get back into my routine and start losing. But hey, that's part of the game, and you just have to make your adjustments. But the confidence level definitely has an effect. Some guys shoot out more plays when they're losing, assuming that they continue to have an edge. I tend to give out less plays, which lessens the blow and keeps me in the positive in just about every sport I have.
Well, on the bright side, there's always a new card the next day for you to look at and try to figure out. And we got a big card here tonight in the NBA. Lots of games, several double-digit favorites on the card, though 4 of the games with double-digit favorites here kind of speaks to the current state of where the NBA is, much like all the other leagues that are out there. But any angles, any first or second half things you're looking for, any types of bounce-back scenarios that have kind of caught your eye a little bit here for Wednesday?
Well, I know the New York Knicks are playing better ball, and granted they're playing a lesser competition, but they are playing a lot better ball than they did earlier in the season. The Philadelphia game, I can't see Philadelphia going out to try to run up a score, and they've used the load management on Embiid before, so it would not surprise me if you don't see a lot of their stars playing long minutes in this game. Couple others I'm taking a look at. The Houston-Denver game is sort of interesting to me. You've got a Houston team that enters here on a big winning streak, and they're only getting 1 point right now in Denver, which is kind of strange because when you take a look at the Houston Rockets, they just played 3 games in 4 days, had yesterday off. Now they're playing Denver, and they got to play the Clippers in 2 days. But this Denver Nuggets team is very well rested. They had 2 days off before they played on Sunday at Utah, and that's the only road game they play in an 8-game stretch. Now they're back after 2 more days off. So you've got a well-rested Denver team playing at home in altitude, only laying a point to Houston here. And as I say, Houston's fat and happy coming into this one. The line opened at 2 for Denver and has been bet down to 1. That tells me that maybe there's an injury here that I don't know about. In fact, you go down the card today, and there's a few games where you could tell there's injuries. Brooklyn opened 5.5, has been bet down to 3.5 and 4. I'm assuming Kyrie's not going to play. I think that's what that's telling me. Orlando against Toronto, 4.5 down to 3, and a good spot for Toronto there. It tells me Toronto's not going to be fully there this week, for this game. But the load management is something that you really got to take a look at. There was that game yesterday, the first game on the schedule, that Portland game. That line moved up to +4 and then ended up closing, I think, at -3.5 the other way. It was just one of those games that as soon as one team would announce somebody was out, the line would move. Then the other team says, well, since he's going to be out, I think I'll rest these guys. And then the line moves back the other way. The NBA has been hard to bet for years for a lot of people, but it gets even harder when you don't even know who's going to play and people change their mind all day long.
So I guess the follow-up question to that would be then, obviously it's difficult because you're sending out premium selections to clients, What's your market entry time for the NBA? Because news seems to be breaking throughout the day here, and of course, again, you can read into some of these line moves. Sometimes it's people trying to grab a number. Sometimes it's people speculating. Obviously, you can speculate a lot of times with some of the superstars and the load management thing that you mentioned. But at what point during the day do you feel confident locking in those NBA plays with some of the news that we get over the course of the day?
Yeah, I'm less confident in that regard because you never know when to put them out. I usually have a number I'm looking to get, and once I see that number, I bet it, and then that's when I send it out. I try to send them out as early as possible. That way, the client's got all day to be able to shop that line at his books. I know some guys put them out right before game time, and sure, you've got all the information there, but you don't have any edges in that line at that point. I'm trying to get ahead of the line movements. And if there's some talk that somebody might not play, I want to get in that earlier. I try to do it right after I place a bet, and it all depends on the number in the game and who I expect to play.
Well, again, that is the tough part is, trying to navigate this balance between getting out in front of a line move, trying to get some good value on that number. And then, of course, 15 minutes later or 20 minutes later, somebody may be announced out or some game time decision may be finalized. It's definitely tough in the NBA. So, kudos to you for the success that you've had and, the success that I think you expect to have as we go forward here on the hardwood. But we transition over to the gridiron here. We do some college football for this week and couple of blowouts in action on Tuesday night. Maybe we're setting up for a couple of blowouts on Wednesday night too. Buffalo up to 8.5 and 9. Miami of Ohio 31.5 against Akron. I know we beat a dead horse here with the MAC, but man, I don't remember the conference ever being not just this bad, but this, not entertaining.
No, it's I used to get all excited about these MAC games during the week. Our past, we're both graduates of Akron University, and we take pride in knowing a little bit more about the MAC than most people. And it's just not been as fun the last couple of years. I don't know if I've just come to the realization that when bad teams, and this, as you pointed out, conferences or the MAC is really down this year. Bad teams, there's so much variance in bad teams. We see that, yesterday Ohio wins that game by 42 points. A team I bet on with Ohio, I think the last two games, I think I lost them both. Just hadn't played well. And, Northern Illinois, I could see that one coming yesterday. I gave out a video free play on Eastern Michigan in that game. Northern Illinois needed to win out to make a bowl, but it was clear that this Northern Illinois team is just not very good this year. And so a lot of people thought, hey, they need to grab these last two games and, go bowling. Well, that's nice as a premise, but you've got to know the talent level on some of these teams. And they just are not good enough to be able to be put in that spot where they're a favorite in that game against an Eastern Michigan team who, to me, was the better team, and you were getting 3.5 points. Couple games tonight. This Toledo team, I don't know what the hell to make of this team. They just fell apart midway through the season. Buffalo's been a little bit more consistent, and Buffalo's taken money. Toledo's already bowl eligible. Buffalo continues to need victories. Akron, no part of Akron, and it's funny how I was at a meeting the other day with a lot of bookmakers, a lot of the sharpest guys in town, and we had a debate on who the worst team in college football was, and they were all saying UMass, and I said, yeah, I said, my numbers say UMass. I said, but keep in mind that, Akron lost to UMass. I said, I vote for Akron to be the worst team. And the highs haven't been, from a power rating standpoint this year, the highs haven't been like Alabama either last year or the year before. They were setting records as to such a great team that they were. There are so many teams right now that are as low from a power standpoint that I have ever had. And Akron's one of them. Akron, UMass. There's a group of 5 down there that Bowling Green, one of them, that I want no part of if I don't have to. But then again, my job is to find these underdogs that are worthy of a wager, try to get on them before they make the corrections and start playing well. Well, none of these teams got on that this year. So there's a lot of guys that like to play those ugly dogs that are having a tough time in college football this year.
All right, so we will talk about a MAC game here as we go over to Saturday, and this one's Ball State and Kent State, game 117, 118 here in this one. And I mean, this is probably the best MAC game of the weekend. Interesting here, both of these teams have to win because they're sitting on 4 victories. Both of them need to win out to go to a bowl game, if they would even get selected with 6 wins to go to a bowl game. But this is an interesting one here because you've got Ball State laying 3 with extra juice or 3.5 on the road. And I think if you look at the body of work for these two teams, you could make a case that Ball State maybe should be a little bit more of a favorite. At the same time, there's still a 4-6 team against a 4-6 team laying a road price in a role that they're not very used to.
Yeah, Ball State's played a little bit tougher schedule. That's one of the things you need to look at. I like Ball State in this game. This is the only MAC game that I've had any interest in this week. Ball State's a team, as you mentioned, they need to win out. They haven't had a non-losing season since 2013. So I think it's very important for the seniors on this team to at least go out on a positive here, which would be going 6-6 and making at least themselves bowl eligible and not having the losing team. Next week they host Miami, Ohio. Miami's obviously the better team. But that could be a victory for Ball State. They're just as good. They just haven't put it all together. But they lost 3 straight games. But my numbers have them being the clear favorite here. Kent's off an upset victory over Buffalo in a game that I didn't think they deserved. They lost the yardage battle by 95 and the first down battle by 4. Buffalo ran for 1.8 yards per carry better than Kent State did in that game. And Kent State still found a way to win, and that's not one of the teams that I think of for a good passing game when I take a look at the MAC. You take a look at Kent; they've lost the yardage 4 straight games, where Ball State has won the yardage 3 out of 5 games. So you try to break it down a little bit more than the final scores in these games, and I just think the Ball State's the hungrier team here. I like to play on teams that I think are better than what their records are. And I'm getting one of those here against a team who probably is pretty happy with that victory last week and probably didn't deserve it.
Well, I know that's an angle that you played a lot in the NBA in terms of looking at teams that, led most of the game or playing to an expectation most of the game. And then you kind of write off something fluky that happens in the fourth quarter. Similar thing there with Kent State. I got to say, as far as power ratings overlays go, this is one of my biggest of the week. I've got Ball State 7 in this game. So I may end up playing this one. I still haven't really decided. I'm still a little bit, as we talked about, gun shy about playing the MAC. But I think that this is one where there is some value here on the road team. How about game 125, 126 here? Texas A&M and Georgia. And this one's intriguing for a variety of different reasons. The first of which is that Georgia has already won the SEC East. Does not matter what happens in this game for them. On the other hand, they can't lose because it would take them out of the college football playoff discussion. So you kind of wonder what Georgia's going to look like here this week, laying almost 2 touchdowns against Texas A&M.
Yeah, especially when they play their big rival Georgia Tech next week. And as much as people like to play underdogs, I don't want no part of that underdog in this game against Georgia next week. Texas A&M has played a lot better ball, but Texas A&M from a game score standpoint is coming off their best game of the year. And I like to fade teams when they hit the peak, sort of like a stock market type of thing. We kind of talked about this in the last segment. So I think that's a little bit of value here on Georgia. The line's been bet 14.5 down to 13.5. And, a couple of sharper places are sitting at 13 at this point. So it's bouncing between the two. But, I think this is just going to be a extremely good defensive game. This Georgia defense on the season has just been amazing to me. You take a look at how many points they've allowed. The most points Georgia has allowed in any game all season long was that 20 points they lost in that loss to South Carolina. They lose that game 20-17. In that game, they allowed less than 300 yards. So that 20 points just tells you how good this Georgia defense is, and it has been amazing. You go back, look over the season, 3 times they've shut out the opposition. One of them being a Missouri team, but that was after the Missouri basically was in a different position than they were earlier in the season when Missouri was I think they made the top 25 at one point. But they're playing this Texas A&M team, and Texas A&M's, they're playing good ball as of late. They come in off of 4 wins. Their defense has played a little bit better as of late, but they haven't faced an offense as good as Georgia. Last time they played in their conference, they played Mississippi State, gave up 30, although they scored 49 themselves. So I'm leaning with Georgia here. Don't think it makes my card, but I like to fade the team that's off of their best play of the season, and I just think this Georgia team is much better on both sides of the ball than Texas A&M.
And of course, that South Carolina game for Georgia, pick 6 right before half, that completely changed the complexion of that game. So they even only gave up, the 13 points to South Carolina on offense with that pick 6 that factored into the equation. So one more game to talk about here on the college card, and I think this one's intriguing. And I got to say, a few weeks ago, after the loss to Duke, I lowered Virginia Tech a lot in my power ratings. And I kind of wondered, maybe Justin Fuente's not the guy for this job. Bud Foster obviously retiring at the end of the year. Kind of wondered about the state of this Hokies program. Game 187-188 is Pitt and Virginia Tech. Vatech up from 3 to as high as 4.5 out there now, and they are playing absolutely phenomenal football here.
They are, and I'll be honest, I faded them last week and got it handed to me really early against Georgia Tech. I didn't think they'd have any interest after playing Notre Dame and then that big showdown against Wake Forest. And then with Virginia on deck is the big rivalry. So I thought that was a situation with Pitt coming up, Georgia Tech and Pitt, that we could take advantage of them. And I was completely wrong. And this Virginia Tech team, when they lost to Duke 45-10, you thought their season was over. But, you take a look at how this team has played lately. The last 2 games have been their best 2 of the season. Their last 4 games overall have been their best of the season. The game against Georgia Tech, I just talked about playing teams off of a peak performance. That was by far their best game score of the season. So if you're looking to play Virginia Tech, you're looking to play a team at the peak, but maybe it's just a team that they had the talent all along and they just couldn't put it together early. Pitt's a team that, not a big offensive team. A lot of people look to fade Pitt, but Pitt's one of those teams that I've been very good on. I picked good spots to play on Pitt this year, and that defense has been very good. The most they've given up on the season is 34 to Central Florida, and that was a team, if you remember, that was a team coming into that game still undefeated, Central Florida in that contest, and they were a huge underdog. And that was one of my biggest plays of the season was Pitt in that game. And even the week before, you look back on it now, and they lose to Penn State 17-10, holding Penn State to 17 points is pretty impressive. So you got a very good defense here in Pitt that I really like to play on. But I don't want to stand in the way of Virginia Tech. I can see lots of reasons for me to play Pitt here, but I got run over last week. I'm not going to stand in front of that train again this week. I don't care, even if it is a peak performance that they played last week. Normally this would be, if I was seeing things well, I'd probably be on Pitt in this game. But I went 0-3 last week in college football on Saturday, and a little bit tentative this week.
I think what the big factor is here in this game is, can Pitt get pressure? Virginia Tech going with Hendon Hooker a couple of games ago against Notre Dame, they wound up doing more of like a wildcat type setup where Quincy Patterson is a quarterback, but he's probably more of a runner than a thrower. That's what I wonder about here for Pitt, because Pitt leads the country with 45 sacks on the season. If they get into that Virginia Tech backfield, obviously they can make this game a whole lot different than what the line movement is suggesting. If they can't, then you do wonder about Pitt's defense. Their pass defense very good because of those sacks in large part, because of that pressure. It's an interesting game. I think this is more of an X's and O's type of game as opposed to what we're probably seeing out there in the marketplace of people piling on that Virginia Tech side. So I think it'll be a fun game. I think it'll be an interesting game. As you mentioned, probably not a game that I'll have too much involvement in either. We transition over to the NFL here to finish up the show for a few minutes, and we take a look at game 259-260, Oakland and the New York Jets. A lot of 2.5 starting to pop up now with Oakland a road favorite.
Yeah, this Oakland team is, at least to me, has been a real surprise this year. I didn't like the hire at head coach originally, and I hadn't seen anything that shows me that this Oakland team, who will soon be in Vegas, was anything to get overexcited about. But Oakland's been pretty good all season long. I give Gruden a lot of props, and they won 3 straight games, been in Detroit, the Chargers, and Cincinnati. When you take a look at Oakland, from a road standpoint, they go to Minnesota, lose by 20, go to Indy, win that game, which at the time was pretty impressive. Go to Chicago, win in Chicago. Green Bay lose by 18, and then Houston lose that close game by 3. So it's a team in Oakland that's shown they can win on the road. But I'd prefer the Jets here at 3. I think you may be able to still get 3, but you pay an extra juice. 2.5, as you pointed out, is probably the best you're going to get at this point. Heard a story the other day, and just going through some of the articles that I read that the quarterback Darnold got together with Adam Gase, and they discussed what has been working in the offense. And last week they narrowed the offense down a little bit, and the team put up 34 points against Washington. And granted, it was Washington, but you are getting the Jets team in a definite step-up situation. They played Washington, the Giants, and Miami the last 3 weeks. They win 2 out of those 3 games. Losing to Miami still, that one kind of puzzles me, but it is a step-up game for the Jets. They've looked better as of late, but they've done so against very weak opposition. Prefer the Jets at 3. Can't get the 3. I don't know if I can get involved here.
What about Jets plus 8.5? Is this a teaser candidate game for you or no?
Well, let me see what we've got the total at this point.
46-ish? 46.5?
Yeah, as long as it's under 47, I think it's a situation where a teaser may work. Jets cited a teaser with the Jets last week that worked out for me. Unfortunately, I believe it was Jacksonville, didn't hold up their bargain. But, there's different ways to play each and every one of these games. And, teasers are always one that you could take a look at, try to find something to go with it here in a low total game. May be the problem. But they got a total of 37 in the Denver-Buffalo game with the Lions 4. So you're not getting that key number of 3. It's already in your favor. So if something opens up, if you can play it open-ended, I could see it. But with the way the lines are right now, you may have a hard time getting a true Stanford Wong teaser on this game to find another partner.
Well, and the other game that we're going to talk about here is in that teaser range, Seattle and Philadelphia game 273, 274. This one flexed out of Sunday Night Football, which is why it's all the way down at the bottom of the board by rotation number. Seattle 1.5-point dog out on the road at Philadelphia. This one's down from 2.5 or 3. The problem with teasing it is that this total's 48.5. So a little bit high to play the teaser. But what about this handicap in general, Brian?
Yeah, I was looking at that and I said, anytime you have a higher total, you have more chances of variance, which is why we prefer the lower scoring game or the low total games when we have a teaser. I played Philadelphia. That was my only NFL play last year, and we know what happened in that one. Just Philadelphia, the defense is playing really good ball as of late. 13 to Buffalo, 14 to Chicago, 17 to New England. All 3 teams struggling offensively, and it's not rare. It's rare we can say that about New England. It's been the New England defense has been so good this year, but the Eagles offensively just haven't put it together. They continue to have injuries to key players, especially at the receiver standpoint, and you've got to be able to spread the field to be able to have success. I've been trying to fade Seattle all year. I think Seattle's not as good as what they're being graded at, but I've had a hard time having success doing it. If I think Philadelphia is the better team here, but yet I don't know if I can trust them. And, this Seattle side is something that I guess I would lean more in that direction. You take a look at who they played on the road. They've yet to lose on the road. They get that game against San Francisco last week. That was a huge game, a statement game. So they're a little bit of a drop down for that, and this will be their second straight road game. But I guess I trust Seattle more here than I do Philadelphia. And, they've given me nothing on the road to want to play against that. So, lean the teaser here, lean Seattle on the money line, but not sure I'm going to get there either way.
No, and just in general here as we wrap up the segment, looking at the NFL card this week, I mean, you want to try to play dogs in the NFL whenever possible, but this week, I mean, Miami is tough to take. Denver's in an interesting back-to-back road spot and a long trip out to Buffalo. Cincinnati is a train wreck. The Giants are also a bad team. The Jets that we already talked about. Carolina is taking on a New Orleans team that looks great, and Carolina is just fading fast. Jameis Winston turns it over too much to take Tampa Bay. Haskins with the Redskins. This is not a good week to find underdogs in the NFL. I think it's going to be a very low-volume card for a lot of people out there.
Yeah, I would think so. And you mentioned Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay's taking money from the wise guys each and every week. It reminds me a little bit of the Browns when the Browns were so bad as opposed to just being bad. But Tampa finds ways to blow the game, and it's sort of like the opposite of a New England, where you look at the stats and New England should not be winning like they are winning. You look at Tampa Bay, they should be better than what they're doing. Their stats are always so good. It's just these damn turnovers. Well, and I'm to the point now where I just can't trust Tampa Bay because they're going to lose the turnover battle each and every week. And as we know, if you lose the turnover battle, you're not going to cover many games in this sport.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I've already said I cannot back Jameis Winston again this year. We'll see if I hold to it. I certainly should after the 4 picks last week and did wind up on the Saints in one of the contests. So, I don't know. I can't lay 4.5 with Atlanta either. So, real difficult week here in the NFL, to say the least. Bryan Leonard, professional handicapper over at wagertalk.com. What's going on over there right now, man?
Wednesday's video day. Be heading in there and doing all the videos. We're getting tremendous views, and now that our company is getting bigger and has more success, we're getting invited to be on. We've been on Zumo, which is a television or a computer site, and now we just got on Pluto. And I love Pluto. Pluto's got a lot of channels. I love comedy. It's got a lot of comedy channels. It's free. You just download the app and you can watch it on your smart TV. But we're on I believe it's 571 on Pluto now, and we're very excited to be part of that. So you'll be able to see us on videos and then even on your TV now. So it's looking up for our company, and for my own clients, I just got to get back to it and try to turn this little streak around for everybody. And I do apologize, but keep in mind, I'm not putting anything out to you that I'm not betting myself. So it'll probably be a very conservative weekend.
Bryan Leonard, once again, over at wagertalk.com, at BLeonardSports on Twitter. Bryan, appreciate the time as always, man. Stay dry out there, stay safe, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Sounds great. Best of luck to everyone.